Welcome to your audience, friends and scholars. Here I'm Dr. Amjad Ali. In this video, we are going to discuss endogenous growth theory beyond the Solow model. Dear scholars, a chemist, a physicist, and an economist all are trapped on a desert island trying to figure out how to open a can of food. Let's heat the can over the fire until it explodes, says the chemist. No, says the physicist. Let's drop the can onto the rock from the top of a high tree. I have an idea, says the economist. First we assume a can opener. This old joke takes at how economists use assumption to simplify and sometimes oversimplifying the problem they face. It is particularly apt when evaluating the theory of economic growth. One goal of growth theory is to explain the persistent rise in living standard that we observe in most parts of the world. The Solow model shows that such persistent growth must come from technological progress. But where does technological progress comes from? In the Solow model, it is just assumed. The preceding case study, which we have discussed in our previous video on the productivity slowdown of 1970s and speed up of productivity of 1990s, suggests that changes in the pace of technological progress are tremendously important. To understand fully the process of economic growth, we need to go beyond the Solow model and develop models that explain technological advance. Models that do this often go by the label of endogenous growth theory because they reject the Solow model's assumption of exogenous technological change. Although the field of endogenous growth theory is large and sometimes complex, here we get a quick taste of this modern research. The basic model. To illustrate the idea behind the endogenous growth theory, let's start with a particularly simple production function. We have y is equal to ak. Here y is output and k is a capital stock and a here is constant, meaning the amount of output produced for each unit of capital. Notice that this production function does not exhibit the property of diminishing returns to capital. One extra unit of capital produces a extra unit of output regardless of how much capital there is. This absence of diminishing returns to capital is the key difference between this endogenous growth model and the Solow model. Now let's see what this production function says about economic growth and describes capital accumulation with an equation similar to those have used previously. So we have here delta k is equal to delta sy. Now delta sy minus delta k. This equation states that change in capital delta k equals sy investment minus delta k depreciation. Okay, combining this equation with the y is equal to ak production function, it obtains after a bit of manipulation we get delta y over y is equal to delta k over k is equal to sa minus delta. This equation shows that what determines the growth rate of output delta y over y. Notice that as long as SA is greater than depreciation or investment is greater than depreciation, the economy's income grows forever, even without the assumption of exogenous technological progress. Okay, a simple change in the production function can alter dramatically the predictions about economic growth. In the Solow model, saving leads to economic growth temporarily, but diminishing returns to capital eventually force the economy to approach a steady state in which growth depends only on exogenous technological progress. Okay, by contrast, in this endogenous growth model, saving and investment can lead to a persistent growth. So here we have the main question, that is it reasonable to abandon the assumption of diminishing returns to capital? The answer depends on how we interpret the variable k. In the production function we have y is equal to ak. Okay, if one take the traditional view that capital includes only economy stock of plants and equipment, then it is natural to assume diminishing returns. Okay, giving 10 computers to a worker does not make the worker 10 times as productive as he or she is with one computer. Okay, advocates of endogenous growth theory, however, argue that assumption of constant return, or rather than diminishing return to capital, is more appetizing if K is interpreted more broadly. Perhaps the best case can be made for the endogenous growth model by viewing knowledge as a type of capital. Clearly, knowledge is an important input into the economy's production, both its production of goods and services and its production of new knowledge. Compared to other forms of capital, however, it is less natural to assume that knowledge exhibits the property of diminishing return. If one accepts the view that knowledge is a type of capital, then this endogenous growth model, with its assumption of constant returns to capital, becomes a more plausible description of long-run economic growth. Two-sector model. Okay, we have y is equal to ak model is the simplest example of endogenous growth theory or model. The theory has gone well beyond this. Okay, one line of research has tried to develop models with more than one sector of production in order to offer a better description of the forces that governs technological progress. Okay, to see what one might learn from such model, let's sketch out an example. The economy has two sectors which we can call manufacturing firms and research universities. Firms produce goods and services which are used for consumption and investment in physical capital. Universities produce a factor of production called knowledge, which is then freely used in both sectors. Okay, then the economy is described by the production function for firms, the production function for universities, and the capital accumulation equations. So we have y is equal to function of k1 minus mu le, that production function in manufacturing firm, and we have delta E is equal to g mu e, production function in research universities, and we have delta k is equal to sy minus delta k, that is capital accumulation. So here mu is the fraction of labor force in universities, and 1 minus mu is the fraction of labor force in manufacturing sector or firm. And here we have E is the stock of knowledge, which in turn determine the efficiency of labor, and we have G is a function that shows how the growth in knowledge depends on fraction of labor force in universities. The rest of notations are standard as usual. The production function for manufacturing firms is assumed to have constant return to scale. If double both the amount of physical capital K and the effective number of workers in manufacturing 1 minus mu LE by double the output of goods and services Y. Okay, then this model is a cousin of the Y is equal to AK model. Most important, this economy exhibits constant return to capital as long as capital is broadly defined to include knowledge. Okay, in particular, if double both physical capital K and knowledge E, then double the output of both sectors in the economy. As a result, like the Y is equal to AK model, this model can generate persistent growth without the assumption of exogenous shifts in the production function. Here, the persistent growth arises endogenously because the creation of knowledge in universities never slow down. Okay, at the same time, however, this model is also a cousin of the Solow growth model. If mu, the fraction of the labor force in universities, is held constant, then the efficiency of the labor E grows at a constant rate G mu. Okay, this result of constant growth in the efficiency of labor at rate G is precisely the assumption made in the Solow model with technological progress. Moreover, the rest of the model, the manufacturing production function and the capital accumulation equation, also resembles the rest of the Solow model. As a result, for any given value of mu, this endogenous growth model works just like the Solow growth model. There are two key decision variables in the model. As in the Solow model, the fraction of output used for saving and investment determine the steady state capital or we can say the stock of physical capital. In addition, the fraction of labor in universities determine the growth in the stock of knowledge. Both S and mu affect the level of income, although only mu affects the steady state growth rate of income. Thus, this model of endogenous growth takes a small step in the direction of showing which societal decision determine the rate of technological change. The microeconomics of research and development, the two-sector endogenous growth model just presented, takes us closer to understanding the technological progress, but it still tells us only a little story about the creation of knowledge. Okay, if one thinks about the process of research and development for an even movement, three facts become apparent. First, although knowledge is largely a public good, that is a good freely available to everyone, much research is done in firms that are driven by the profit motive. Second, research is profitable because innovations give firms temporary monopolies, either because of the patent system or because there is an advantage to being the first firm on the market with a new product. Third, when one firm innovates, other firms build on that innovation to produce the next generation of innovation. These facts are not easily connected with the growth model we have discussed here so far. Some endogenous growth models try to incorporate these facts about research and development. Doing this requires modeling both the decision that firms face as they engage in research and the interaction among firms that have some degree of monopoly power over their innovation. Going into more detail about these models is beyond the scope of this video here, but it should be clear already that one virtue of these endogenous growth model is that they offer a more complete description of the process of technological progress. Okay, one question these models are designed to address is whether, from the standpoint of society as a whole, private profit maximizing firms tend to engage in too little or too much research. In other words, is the social returns to research, which is what society cares about, greater or smaller than the private return, which is what motives individual firms. Okay, it turns out that as a theoretical matter, there are effects in both directions. Okay, on the one hand, when a firm creates a new technology, it makes other firms better off by giving them a base of knowledge on which to build in future research. On the other hand, when firms invest in research, it can also make other firms worse off if it does little more than being the first to discover a technology that another firm would have invented in due course. This duplication of research effort have been called the stepping on toys effect, with the firms left to their own devices to do too little or too much research depends on whether the positive standing on shoulder externality or the negative stepping on toys externality is more prevalent. Although theory alone is ambiguous about whether research effort is more or less than optimal, the empirical work in this area is usually less so. Many studies have suggested the standing on shoulder externality is important, and as a result the social returns to research is large, often in excess of 40% per year. This is an impressive rate of return, especially when compared to the return to physical capital, which we earlier discussed, that is around 8% per year. In the judgment of some economists, this finding justifies substantial government studies or government subsidies to the research and development. Okay, the process of creative destruction. In his 1942 book Capitalism, Socialism and Democracy, economist Joseph Schumpeter suggested that economic progress comes through a process of creative destruction. According to Schumpeter, the driving force behind progress is the entrepreneur with an idea for a new product, a new way to produce an old product or some other innovation. Okay, when the entrepreneur's firm enters the market, it has some degree of monopoly power over its innovation. Indeed, it is the prospect of monopoly profits that motivates the entrepreneur. Okay, the entry of the new firms is good for consumer who now have an expanded range of choices, but it is often bad for incumbent producers who may find it hard to compete with entrants. Okay, if the new product is sufficiently better than the old ones, the incumbent may even be driven out of business. Okay, Okay, over the time the process keeps renewing itself. The entrepreneur's firm becomes an incumbent, enjoying high profitability until its product is displaced by another entrepreneur with the next generation of innovation. The history confirms Schumpeter's thesis that there are winners and losers from technological progress. For example, in England in the early 19th century, an important innovation was the invention and spread of machines that could produce textile using unskilled workers at low cost. This technology advance was good for consumers who could clothe themselves more cheaply, yet skilled knitters in England saw their jobs threatened by new technology, and they respond by organizing violence and strikes. A more recent example of creative destruction involved the retailing giant Walmart. Although retailing seems like a relative static activity, in fact it is a sector that has sizable rates of technological progress over the past several decades. Through better inventory control, marketing and personnel management techniques, for example, Walmart has found ways to bringing goods to consumer at lower cost than traditional retailers. These changes benefit consumer who can buy goods at a lower price and the stakeholders of Walmart who share in its profitability, but they adversely affect small mom and pop store which find it hard to compete with a Walmart open nearby. Okay, faced with the prospect of being the victims of creative destruction, incumbent producers often look to the political process to stop the entry of new or more efficient competitors. Okay, Schumpeter's view or vision of how capitalistic economies work has merits as a matter of economic history. Moreover, it has inspired some recent work in the theory of economic growth. One line of endogenous growth theory pioneered by economists Felix Agon and Peter Howitt builds on Schumpeter's insight by modeling technological advance as a process of entrepreneurial innovations and creative destruction. So this is all about endogenous growth theory beyond the Solow model. So see you with another video. Ciao.